The Haelor Empire's bold move. The galaxy was at peace, or so it seemed. The Haelor Empire, a powerful and fearsome race, ruled over countless worlds. They had fleets of advanced ships, mighty weapons, and soldiers who feared nothing. Their power was unmatched, and they believed no one could challenge them. But the Empire's confidence would soon be tested in a way they never expected. Far from the center of Haelor space, on the edge of the galaxy, a small human vessel floated in the cold void. It was nothing special by Empire standards, barely a speck compared to their massive warships. The ship was called the Defender, and it had been sent on a mission far from Earth, carrying only a handful of humans on board. The crew of the Defender was experienced but ordinary, facing a routine assignment with no hint of danger. The Haelor Empire, however, was not an empire that valued peace for long. A message had come to their leaders, a troubling whisper about the humans. They had been growing stronger, bolder in the galaxy, making alliances and expanding their reach. The Haelor Empire did not like this. To them, humanity was nothing more than an insect, small, insignificant, and unworthy of the space they took up. But the Haelor leaders knew that they could not allow these humans to grow stronger. They had to act before the humans could become a true threat. Without hesitation, the Haelor Empire sent a fleet of 5 warships to deal with the human vessel. The fleet was made up of large, heavily armed ships, each capable of laying waste to entire planets. Their mission was simple: destroy the human ship, send a clear message, and show the galaxy that no one could stand against the Haelor Empire. As the Haelor fleet neared the location of the Defender, the human ship remained still, unaware of the impending danger. The crew was going about their usual business, checking their equipment, scanning for space debris, and exchanging small talk. They didn't know that the greatest threat to their survival was approaching fast. The Defender was outmatched. It wasn't equipped with the advanced weapons or the firepower of the Haelor ships. It was just a small ship with a crew of humans who had no idea they were about to face the most dangerous battle of their lives. The Haelor fleet arrived on the edge of the Defender's radar range. The human ships still didn't detect them. The Haelor ships hovered in place, their engines silent. The Empire's fleet commanders were confident. They knew that the humans had no chance to escape. The Defender had no shield strong enough to resist the Haelor's weapons, no weapons powerful enough to damage their ships. It would be over before the humans even realized what was happening. Activate the attack, the Haelor commander ordered. Target the human ship's engines. Destroy them. The fleet's ships moved into position, aligning themselves perfectly for the attack. In a flash, the first shot was fired. A beam of energy shot through space, heading straight for the Defender. It was so fast and powerful that the crew didn't have time to react. The energy beam slammed into the Defender's hull, sending a massive shockwave through the ship. Inside, alarms began blaring. The crew jumped to their feet, scrambling to understand what had just happened. They had no time to think, only time to act. The attack had come out of nowhere. There was no warning, no time to prepare. The ship rocked again as a second blast from the Haelor fleet hit the Defender, this time tearing into one of its outer layers of armor. The ship began to shudder, its systems starting to fail. The power flickered as the lights dimmed, and the crew could hear the hum of the ship's engines slowing down. "Status report," shouted Captain Jonas, the leader of the crew. His voice was calm but urgent. "Shields are down to 30%. We've lost power to the main engines," one of the crew members shouted back. "We're dead in the water, Captain." Jonas gritted his teeth. He knew this was bad. The Defender was no match for these Haelor warships, but he wasn't about to give up without a fight. He turned to his crew. "Get to the weapons systems. We can't just sit here and wait for them to destroy us." But the Haelor fleet wasn't finished. The attack had only just begun. Another blast hit the Defender, and this time it was more than just the ship's outer layers that were damaged. The Defender's hull cracked open, and debris flew into space. For a moment, Everything went silent. The Defender drifted helplessly in the void. But inside, the crew was fighting. They worked quickly, trying to repair the ship's damaged systems. They knew they were far from safe, but they also knew something the Haelor fleet did not. The Defender wasn't just any ship. It was a human ship, and humanity had a way of surprising their enemies. The Haelor fleet, still hovering outside, was growing confident. They believed this would be an easy victory. They had destroyed the Defender's shields and crippled its engines. The human crew was nothing more than a collection of weak, scared beings. They would beg for mercy soon enough. But they were wrong. The crew of the Defender was not going to beg. They were going to fight, and they had a few tricks up their sleeves that the Haelor Empire could never have predicted. As the Haelor ships continued their attack, the crew of the Defender was already preparing their next move. The Haelor Empire had made one huge mistake. They underestimated humanity's will to survive. The Haelor Empire strikes first. The Haelor fleet loomed like a storm cloud over the helpless Defender. They had no intention of giving the human ship any more chances to escape. Their guns charged, ready to fire another round of powerful energy blasts. The crew aboard the Defender could feel the pressure mounting. The ship was severely damaged, the power systems struggling to keep the lights on, and the hull groaned with every hit it took. Yet despite it all, Captain Jonas refused to give in. "Get those weapons online now," Captain Jonas barked. "We might not have much time." His orders were sharp, his tone filled with urgency, but beneath the pressure, there was a sense of determination. The crew members rushed to their stations, trying to keep the ship functional long enough to fight back. But even as they worked, they could hear the Haelor ships outside, ready to strike again. The enemy fleet had closed in. 4 massive Haelor warships surrounded the Defender, their powerful weapons aimed directly at the human vessel. Each ship was capable of wiping out entire planets, and they were now pointing their full might at a single defenseless ship. There was no way the Defender could survive another round of fire. Yet the Haelor Empire's confidence blinded them to one crucial fact. They didn't know what the Defender was capable of. The Haelor commander on the lead ship grinned as he watched the human vessel struggle. "Pathetic," he muttered to his officers. "Prepare to finish them off. A single shot should be enough to wipe them from existence." With a command from the Haelor commander, the fleet's guns fired once again, and the blinding flash of energy shot toward the Defender. This time, however, something unexpected happened. Just as the energy blast was about to hit, a surge of power pulsed through the Defender, activating a hidden system that had remained dormant until now. The Defender's remaining shields flared to life, blocking the incoming blast with an intensity that shocked the Haelor fleet. The impact sent a ripple through the ship, but the shields held firm, absorbing the energy. The Haelor commander's grin faltered as he watched in disbelief. "What is this?" "They're shields. They shouldn't be able to withstand that." Inside the Defender, the crew had activated their secret weapon, a cloaking device that, when combined with the emergency power surge, allowed the ship to temporarily hide its true strength. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy them some time. Captain Jonas stood at the bridge, a new hope filling his heart. They weren't finished yet. "Fire back," Captain Jonas shouted, his voice filled with defiance. "Hit them with everything we've got." The crew scrambled to prepare the ship's weapons, and within moments, the Defender fired back. A series of pulses shot from the ship's weapons array, lighting up the darkness of space. The Haelor ships tried to respond, but they were caught off guard by the human vessel's unexpected retaliation. The blast from the Defender struck one of the Haelor warships, and the damage was immediate. The massive ship shuddered, its shields flickering as sparks shot from its hull. The Haelor commander on the damaged ship gritted his teeth, trying to regain control of the situation. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Return fire. Take out that human ship now." Despite the surprise attack, the Haelor fleet quickly regrouped. Their warships, however, were not as agile as the Defender. The Haelor ships fired back in full force, their energy weapons cutting through the emptiness of space. But the Defender had already made a crucial move. It was no longer sitting still, waiting for destruction. Captain Jonas had ordered evasive maneuvers, and the Defender darted through the debris of the battlefield, narrowly avoiding each incoming blast. The Haelor ships, unable to predict the ship's sudden agility, fired blindly, each shot missing by inches. The Defender was small, but it was fast, and the crew's resolve gave them the edge the Haelor Empire didn't see coming. "Shields are holding, Captain," one of the crew members reported, "but we're taking damage to the starboard side." Captain Jonas nodded grimly. "We need to keep them distracted. If we can buy enough time, we might just have a chance to escape." But the Haelor Empire wasn't ready to let the Defender go. The fleet had suffered its first hit, but the loss of a single ship was nothing to them. They still had overwhelming firepower, and they would stop at nothing to crush the human vessel. The battle raged on, the Defender dodging and firing back, while the Haelor ships relentlessly pursued. The Defender's crew fought with everything they had, using every ounce of ingenuity and skill to outmaneuver the superior forces. The Haelor Empire was beginning to understand that they were not facing a weak, defenseless species. The fight wasn't over, but one thing had become clear. The Haelor Empire had underestimated humanity. And now, the Empire was in for a fight unlike any they had ever faced before. The hidden weapon unleashed. The battle outside was fierce, but inside the Defender, the crew was fighting a different kind of battle. The ship's outer hull was still intact, but it was only a matter of time before the relentless Haelor attacks would breach it. Captain Jonas knew that if they were going to survive, they needed to strike back harder, faster, and with something the Haelor fleet would never expect. "Keep them distracted," Captain Jonas ordered, his voice sharp. "We need more time to power up the secondary systems." His crew was already working tirelessly, rushing to get the Defender's backup weapons online. They knew that the Haelor ships were still coming for them, and the ship's shields were weakening with every passing moment. But what the Haelor Empire didn't know was that the Defender wasn't just any ordinary human ship. It had a hidden weapon, something so powerful that it could turn the tide of this battle. For years, humanity had been underestimated by the other galactic empires. They had always seen humans as weak, insignificant, and unworthy of attention. The Haelor Empire, in particular, had viewed the humans as little more than pests. But the Defender was equipped with something that was about to prove them all wrong. As the Defender dodged another incoming blast, the crew's work paid off. The ship's backup systems hummed to life, and the engineers cheered as the auxiliary power flowed through the ship's weapons array. One of the crew members, Lieutenant Andrea, glanced at Captain Jonas. "We're almost there, Captain," she said, her fingers flying over the controls. "The secondary weapons are almost fully charged. We'll be able to fire in 10 seconds. "Good," Jonas replied, his eyes locked on the Haelor fleet. "We'll show them what humanity is really capable of." Outside, the Haelor fleet continued its assault, not yet realizing the danger that was about to strike. The Defender had been evading their fire, but with the additional weaponry now online, the human ship was ready to deliver a deadly blow. The Haelor commander, still recovering from the damage to his fleet, continued to bark orders, convinced that victory was imminent. "Fire everything. No mercy." The Haelor commander shouted, his anger rising as he watched the human ship continue to dodge and retaliate. "This ends now." The Haelor warships fired once more, their energy beams streaking toward the Defender with deadly accuracy. But this time, Captain Jonas wasn't just evading the blasts. He was waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. The Defender swerved, expertly dodging the first 2 energy blasts. Then, with a swift turn, the ship came around and unleashed its hidden weapon. In an instant, a massive energy pulse shot out from the Defender, slamming into the nearest Haelor warship. The impact was explosive, sending shockwaves through the surrounding space. The Haelor ship, previously confident and invincible, now appeared to be falling apart. Sparks flew from its hull, and its weapons systems flickered out of control. Direct hit. Lieutenant Andrea shouted, her voice full of awe. "We've crippled their ship, Captain." The Haelor fleet, stunned by the sudden turn of events, hesitated. They had expected the Defender to be weak and defenseless. Instead, it had just delivered a devastating blow. The commander of the Haelor fleet fumed, unable to believe what was happening. "Impossible," he roared. "How could they have such power? Return fire, now." The remaining Haelor ships, realizing the danger, quickly adjusted their tactics, firing with full force. But it was too late. The Defender had already gained the advantage. As the Haelor fleet continued to launch their attacks, the Defender swiftly moved, evading the blasts with ease. The Defender's new weapon had disrupted the Haelor's plans, throwing them off balance and making them question everything they thought they knew about humanity. "Keep it up," Captain Jonas shouted, his confidence growing. "Let's finish this." The crew worked in unison, the atmosphere on the Defender charged with excitement and anticipation. They knew they were still outnumbered, but for the first time since the battle began, they had hope. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. Another blast from the Defender hit a second Haelor ship, this one even more devastating than the first. The ship's engines exploded, sending debris and smoke into space. The once mighty fleet of the Haelor Empire was beginning to fall apart. On the Haelor command ship, the panic was palpable. The commander stared in disbelief as his fleet was systematically crippled by a human vessel they had once believed to be nothing more than an easy target. "We can't lose to them," the Haelor commander screamed. "Order all ships to retreat now." It was too late. The Haelor fleet, though still powerful, was no longer the unstoppable force it had once been. Their confidence had been shattered by the humans' unexpected strength. They had underestimated the human ship, and now they were paying the price. As the Defender prepared for its next move, Captain Jonas stood tall, watching as the Haelor fleet scrambled to regroup. The Defender had already proven its strength, and the battle was far from over. Humanity had just shown the Haelor Empire that they were not to be underestimated, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The Haelor Empire's desperation. The battle had taken a dramatic turn. The Haelor fleet, once confident and assured of their victory, now faced an unexpected challenge. The Defender had struck back with a power they hadn't anticipated, and their once imposing warships were crumbling before the human vessel. The commander of the Haelor fleet paced anxiously on the bridge of his flagship, his mind racing for a solution. "This can't be happening," he muttered under his breath. "A single human ship. How are they doing this?" His officers stood silently, unable to answer. The damage to their ships was mounting, and their once unified fleet was beginning to fall into disarray. Communications between the Haelor ships were increasingly fragmented, and some of the warships had already started to retreat. The Haelor commander's frustration boiled over. "Get them back here," he bellowed. "We need to regroup and attack again, together. If we don't crush that human vessel now, we risk losing everything." The Haelor Empire was built on the belief that their technology, their sheer numbers, and their might could crush any opponent. They had never encountered an enemy like the humans before. They had underestimated the resilience and resourcefulness of a species they had written off as insignificant. And now, the consequences of that mistake were clear. Meanwhile, aboard the Defender, Captain Jonas and his crew were readying themselves for the next phase of the battle. Despite their recent success, they knew they couldn't afford to get complacent. The Haelor fleet wasn't retreating. They were regrouping, preparing for a final, all-out assault. "We need to keep them on the defensive," Captain Jonas said, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "I want every available weapon fired as soon as they come within range. If we can keep them off balance, we might be able to break their formation." Lieutenant Andrea nodded, her eyes scanning the screens. "Weapon systems are ready, Captain, but we can't keep dodging their attacks forever. We need to find a way to end this quickly." The crew worked quickly, understanding the gravity of the situation. They had the advantage, but they knew that if they gave the Haelor Empire a chance to regroup, they would face a much stronger and more coordinated attack. Captain Jonas knew the battle could go either way. But one thing was certain. They couldn't afford to let the Haelor regroup. Outside, the Haelor fleet was beginning to pull back. The ships that were still operational moved into formation, their weapons systems powering up once again. They had suffered damage, but they were far from defeated. The Haelor commander, now determined to destroy the defender at any cost, issued his orders. "Attack, full force," he commanded. "We will not let a single human ship stand in our way. Show them the true power of the Haelor Empire." The Haelor ships moved into position, their weapons charging with a menacing hum. The defender was still in the middle of the battlefield, its once hidden weaponry now fully visible, but it was surrounded. There was nowhere to run. Now, it was a test of strength and will. On board the defender, Captain Jonas surveyed the situation. The Haelor fleet was closing in fast, and there was no room left for evasive maneuvers. This was it, the final showdown. "Prepare for impact," Captain Jonas said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "We've come this far, and we're not backing down now." The crew was silent, each of them focused on their tasks, knowing that the next few minutes would determine their fate. The defender had already defied the odds, but the Haelor fleet was still an overwhelming force. Every person aboard the ship knew that this would be their hardest fight yet. As the Haelor fleet moved in, the commander of the flagship gave the order to fire. A barrage of energy blasts streaked toward the defender, each one carrying enough power to obliterate the human ship. The crew held their breath, waiting for the inevitable impact. But Captain Jonas wasn't finished yet. "Now," he shouted. With a series of calculated maneuvers, the defender evaded the first few blasts, the ship's engines roaring as it spun and weaved through the oncoming fire. The Haelor fleet was relentless, their weapons charging for another round. But this time, the defender wasn't simply dodging, it was retaliating. The human ship fired a series of energy blasts, each one aimed at the weakest points of the Haelor ships. The defender's weapons found their marks, hitting the lead Haelor ship and causing a chain reaction. Sparks flew from the warship's hull as critical systems began to fail. The ship's shields flickered, and the crew aboard the Haelor vessel scrambled to repair the damage. "Direct hit," Lieutenant Andrea shouted. "We've crippled their lead ship." The Haelor commander on the flagship, seeing his fleet beginning to unravel, screamed in frustration. "No, we will not lose to these humans." But it was already too late. The defender had struck a critical blow, and the Haelor fleet was starting to break apart. The Haelor commander issued another order, but his voice lacked the conviction it had moments before. "All ships, retreat. We can't win this fight." But the damage had already been done. The Haelor Empire, in all its might, had failed to conquer the defender. And the humans had sent a message to the galaxy. They were no longer the weak, helpless species the Haelor had believed them to be. The defender had shown them that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and that the Haelor Empire had made a fatal mistake. The Haelor Empire's crumbling might. The defender hovered triumphantly in space, surrounded by the wreckage of Haelor warships. The once formidable fleet that had entered this battle with such confidence was now in disarray. The Haelor Empire, shaken by the unexpected resilience of the human vessel, had begun to retreat in chaos. The commander of the Haelor fleet, once a figure of unshakable authority, stood on the bridge of his flagship, trembling with rage and disbelief. How could this happen? The Haelor commander muttered to himself. We were so sure of our victory. How could one human ship, one vessel, have done this? The bridge crew of the Haelor flagship remained silent, their eyes downcast as they faced the reality of their defeat. Many had never imagined that their mighty empire, known for conquering countless worlds, would be outmatched by a single human ship. The idea was absurd, yet it had happened. Outside the bridge's observation windows, the scene was clear. The once formidable Haelor fleet was in retreat. The damaged ships, many of them crippled or destroyed, fled toward the safety of the distant Haelor homeworld. The Defender had delivered a blow so devastating that the Haelor had no choice but to retreat and lick their wounds. Meanwhile, aboard the Defender, Captain Jonas stood proudly, surveying the aftermath of the battle. The ship's crew was exhausted but elated, knowing they had done something no one in the galaxy thought possible. They had defied the Haelor Empire and emerged victorious. "Status report, Lieutenant," Captain Jonas said, his voice calm but filled with relief. "Most of the damage is superficial, Captain," Lieutenant Andrea responded, her fingers flying over the control panel. "We've lost a few shields and some minor systems, but nothing we can't fix. We're still fully operational. The Haelor are in full retreat, but some of their ships are trying to regroup. They're not giving up yet." Jonas nodded. "We can't afford to underestimate them. But for now, let's give ourselves a moment to breathe. We've earned it." As the crew began to relax, a sense of disbelief hung in the air. They had just defeated a fleet that had once seemed invincible, and yet the victory felt bittersweet. The battle was far from over. The Haelor Empire had suffered a crushing blow, but they still had power. They would come back, and when they did, humanity would need to be ready. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the Haelor Empire's leaders were meeting in a secret council. The defeat at the hands of the Defender had sent shockwaves through their ranks. No one had expected this to happen. The Empire's generals, their pride shattered, had convened to discuss their next move. "The humans. They've humiliated us," one of the generals spoke, his voice dripping with anger. "A single ship, a single human vessel. How did they do this?" A second general, his expression cold and calculating, nodded. "The Defender has some kind of advanced technology. But what we know for sure is that humanity is no longer the weak species we once thought them to be. They've just demonstrated that they are capable of taking on the might of our fleet." The third general, more pragmatic than the others, leaned forward. "What do we do now? We can't simply ignore this. The Defender has proven that humans are capable of more than we ever expected. But if we respond too aggressively, we risk escalating a war. If we want to survive, we need to be cautious. We can't afford to attack without fully understanding what we're dealing with." The Haelor commander, still recovering from the loss, stood at the head of the table. He slammed his fist on the council's table, his frustration evident. "Cautious, after what they've done to us. No, we will crush them before they have the chance to do this again. I'll make sure of it. We will not be humiliated by these humans." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. While some shared the commander's anger, others knew that rash decisions could lead to even more disastrous outcomes. Yet, one thing was clear: the Haelor Empire's superiority was now in question. The very idea that a human ship could stand up to them had shaken the Empire to its core. On the Defender, Captain Jonas watched the Haelor retreat from his command chair, a sense of victory filling him. The battle was not over, but humanity had made a statement. They were no longer the underdogs, no longer the forgotten species in the Galactic Council's eyes. They had proven that the Haelor's might could be challenged, that they were capable of standing toe-to-toe with the largest and most powerful empires in the galaxy. "We've sent a message today," Captain Jonas said, his voice filled with determination. "But we can't stop here. The Haelor will regroup, and they'll come back. We need to make sure humanity is ready for whatever they throw at us next." Lieutenant Andrea nodded in agreement. "We'll be ready, Captain. This fight is far from over, but humanity has proven we're a force to be reckoned with." As the Defender and its crew prepared for the inevitable counterattack, a new sense of unity filled the ship. Humanity had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. The Haelor Empire, wounded but not defeated, would return. But this time, they would face a humanity that had tasted victory, a humanity that had learned the cost of underestimating their strength. And when the Haelor came back, humanity would be waiting. The Haelor Empire strikes back. The stars outside the defenders' viewports glistened like scattered jewels, an eerie calm that contrasted sharply with the tense atmosphere inside the ship. The crew had won a monumental victory, but they knew it wasn't the end. The Haelor Empire was formidable, and no empire of such size and strength would accept defeat without retaliation. Aboard the Haelor flagship, the High Command was in disarray. The defeat had shaken the very foundation of their belief in their invincibility. But now, the time for anger had passed, and the time for action had arrived. The Haelor Empire would not be humiliated again. They would strike back, and this time, they would crush humanity's defiance before it could grow. The Haelor commander stood at the center of the war room, his fists clenched at his sides. His face was twisted with frustration, but there was also a spark of cold determination in his eyes. "We will annihilate them," the commander growled, his voice low but filled with anger. "We underestimated humanity before. We will not make that mistake again. Prepare the fleet. This time, we will strike with everything we have." The officers surrounding him nodded, understanding the magnitude of what was about to unfold. This would be a war to wipe out humanity's rebellion, and they would use every weapon at their disposal. "Set course for the human homeworld," the commander ordered, his tone final. "We'll make sure this is their last stand." Back on the Defender, Captain Jonas paced the command deck, his brow furrowed with concern. The victory over the Haelor fleet had been hard won, but Jonas knew the Haelor weren't finished. If anything, their defeat had only made them more dangerous. He knew it wasn't just a matter of time before they came back. It was a matter of how they would come back. "Lieutenant Andrea," Captain Jonas said, his voice steady but tinged with worry. "We need to prepare. The Haelor will return. And this time, they won't be so easy to beat." Andrea looked at the screen displaying the Haelor fleet's last known location. The Haelor had been retreating in disarray, but now their ships were slowly regrouping. She nodded grimly. "We're not ready for another attack. We're patched up, but we've used most of our heavy weapons, and our shields aren't at full strength. We need more time." "Time is the one thing we don't have," Jonas replied, his expression hardening. "The Haelor are regrouping, and they'll be back with a vengeance. We've shown them we're not helpless, but now they'll bring everything they have. We need to prepare the fleet, and we need to prepare Earth." Andrea paused, considering the gravity of what Jonas had said. "You're right, Captain. We've got one shot at this. If we don't act fast, we could lose everything." "Exactly," Captain Jonas agreed. "Start sending messages to Earth's fleet. Tell them to mobilize. We're going to need every ship, every weapon, and every soldier we can muster." The crew quickly moved into action, communicating with Earth's fleet, rallying the forces for what would be their largest conflict yet. Earth had already sent its best ships into space to help defend the planet. Now it would send everything it had. Across the galaxy, the Haelor fleet was growing, and the stakes had never been higher. The Haelor commander stared at the displays, watching as his fleet prepared for the final assault. He had vowed revenge, and now he would see it carried out. The Defender had made a mockery of their empire, and it would pay the price. "All ships ready," a voice called from the comms panel. "The fleet is prepared to move, Commander." The Haelor commander nodded, his eyes narrowing. "It's time to end this. Full speed ahead to Earth." The Haelor fleet began its journey, moving faster than ever, their weapons fully charged and their shields raised. They would not let another human ship stand in their way. This time, there would be no more mistakes. On Earth, the situation was becoming increasingly dire. The Haelor had already proven their strength, and their assault on the Defender had been a wake-up call for humanity. But Earth had not been idle since that first battle. They had been preparing, gathering ships, upgrading weapons, and building new fleets. Admiral Sarah Donovan, commander of Earth's largest fleet, stood in front of a massive tactical display, watching as ships began to position themselves for the upcoming battle. She had been briefed on the situation and knew exactly what was at stake. If the Haelor returned in full force, Earth would have to be ready. "We can't let them land on Earth," Admiral Donovan said, her voice firm. "They won't just destroy our ships. They'll take the planet itself. We need to hold them off long enough to make sure we can fight back. Our fleets are stronger than they think." Lieutenant Carter, a tactical officer, looked up from his station. "Admiral, we've got some new intelligence coming in. The Haelor fleet is on the move. They've just set course for Earth." "Prepare the fleet," Donovan ordered, her eyes hardening. "We will meet them head-on. Earth will not fall. Not today." The final confrontation was now inevitable. The Haelor Empire was charging toward Earth with a vengeance, intent on wiping out humanity once and for all. But Earth was ready, and the Defender was leading the charge. Captain Jonas and his crew, with the help of Earth's entire fleet, would face the Haelor in an all-out battle for survival. The Defender powered up its remaining weapons, and the crew stood at the ready. The next battle would determine the fate of humanity. They had shown the galaxy their strength once, but now they would prove it again. "Here they come," Captain Jonas said, his voice filled with resolve. "Let's make sure they never forget what happens when you challenge humanity." The Haelor commander had vowed to destroy them, but the crew of the Defender was ready for the fight of their lives. The final battle, humanity's last stand. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before the Defender and the assembled fleet of Earth's finest warships. The looming shadow of the Haelor Empire's fleet was visible in the distance, a collection of powerful ships that had once seemed invincible. Yet the human ships, though outnumbered, stood resolute. There was no turning back now. This would be the battle that determined whether humanity would survive or fall. On the bridge of the Defender, Captain Jonas stood, his hands gripping the edge of his command chair as he gazed at the approaching Haelor fleet. The tension in the air was palpable, but Jonas remained calm. He had seen this moment coming. It was inevitable. The Haelor had underestimated humanity before, but this time, humanity was prepared. "All hands, prepare for battle," Jonas ordered, his voice steady but filled with the gravity of the situation. "This is it. We've shown them our strength, but now we show them our resolve. We fight for Earth. We fight for humanity." The crew worked swiftly, their motions precise as they readied their weapons and shields. They knew what was at stake. They had trained for this moment, and now it was time to put everything they had learned into action. The Haelor fleet would not show mercy, but neither would humanity. On the Haelor flagship, the commander stood with a grim expression, watching as the human fleet prepared for battle. He had underestimated them once, but no more. This time, he would crush them without hesitation. His fleet had the firepower to wipe out Earth's defenses in minutes. This would be their revenge. "Commence the attack," the commander ordered, his voice cold and commanding. "Destroy them all." The Haelor fleet surged forward, their weapons charging, ready to unleash their fury upon the human forces. But as they moved closer, they were met with a surprise. Humanity's ships were not only ready for battle, they had a secret weapon. The Defender's advanced technology, the same technology that had helped them win the previous battle, was now fully operational. The human fleet was stronger, faster, and more lethal than the Haelor could have ever anticipated. The first salvo from the Haelor fleet rang out, bright beams of energy cutting through space toward the human ships. The Defender's shields flared, absorbing the brunt of the attack. But the ship held firm. The Haelor commander's eyes widened in disbelief. He had expected the human ships to crumble under the assault, but they didn't. They were fighting back with a ferocity he had never seen before. "Return fire," the commander shouted, his anger growing. But his orders were met with the sound of explosions as several of his own ships were hit, their shields failing under the overwhelming power of the Defender and Earth's fleet. Humanity's ships, using the advanced tactics learned from their previous victories, had positioned themselves in a way that the Haelor hadn't anticipated. They weren't just retaliating. They were attacking with precision, targeting key points on Haelor ships with deadly accuracy. One by one, Haelor vessels exploded in bursts of light, their destruction signaling a shift in the balance of power. "Captain, we've got them on the run," Lieutenant Andrea reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "The Haelor fleet is retreating. They're losing ships faster than they can recover." Jonas nodded, his gaze never leaving the battlefield. He knew better than to let his guard down. This wasn't over yet. The Haelor commander was ruthless, and he would not give up without a fight. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that the Haelor were losing. Humanity's fleet, though smaller, was coordinated and determined. The Haelor ships were disorganized, their once pristine formations now shattered under the relentless assault. The Defender, with its hidden strength and superior technology, had turned the tide of the battle. With the Haelor fleet retreating, Jonas knew that victory was within their grasp. But there was one final obstacle: the Haelor flagship. It was heavily armored and bristling with weapons, a symbol of the Haelor's pride and power. If they could destroy it, the rest of the fleet would collapse. "Prepare to engage the Haelor flagship," Jonas ordered. "This is our final chance to end this." The Defender and the remaining human ships concentrated their fire on the Haelor flagship. Every weapon on board was aimed at the massive ship, determined to bring it down. The Haelor flagship retaliated with everything it had, firing powerful blasts that rocked the Defender. But it wasn't enough. The human fleet was relentless, and the Haelor flagship began to falter. "Captain, we've breached their defenses," Lieutenant Andrea shouted. "One final push, and we'll have them." With a final barrage, the Defender unleashed everything it had, and the Haelor flagship exploded in a magnificent burst of light. The shockwave rippled through space, signaling the end of the Haelor Empire's dominance. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy was left in stunned silence. The once feared Haelor Empire had been decisively defeated by a single human fleet. The Defender and its crew had proven that humanity was no longer the weak species they had once been. They had shown the galaxy that when pushed to the edge, humanity would fight back with everything they had, and they would win. Captain Jonas stood on the bridge of the Defender, looking out at the wreckage of the Haelor fleet. The battle was over, but the war had changed everything. Humanity had proven its strength, its resilience, and its ability to survive. And the galaxy would never forget it. "We've won," Jonas said quietly, a sense of awe in his voice. "But this is only the beginning." As the Defender and the human fleet turned back toward Earth, the crew knew that their victory would echo throughout the galaxy for generations. The Haelor Empire was gone, but humanity's place in the stars had just begun. The universe had been warned. Never again would humanity be underestimated.